Who had the best album of 2022? The Grammys might suggest it's one of these. Anthony Fantano might suggest it's one of these. And your dad might say that all music nowadays sucks and there hasn't been a good song in the last 30 years. Well, I'll be the one to let you know what the best album of 2022 was, along with 9 other fantastic albums that have come out this year. Also, I'm going to start doing more personal music-related commentary over on my second channel, so make sure to subscribe because I'll be sporadically posting music reactions, music opinions, underrated artists, commentary videos, maybe even vlogs, who knows. It's going to be a much more personal and casual channel. So how this top 10 list is going to work is I'm going to go through the first 9, and then I'm going to do some honorable mentions, and then I'll tell you the best album of the year. Coming in at number 10, we have Metro Boomin, Heroes and Villains. I feel like recently mainstream trap albums have been lacking something, and honestly it might be the production because Metro Boomin came through with fantastic production on this album. I think all the artists throughout this album complemented each other very well, and the way all the tracks were structured with beat switches, tempo changes, and all that made for a super entertaining album. Here's my top 3 favorite songs from the album. I think Raindrops was phenomenal. I love how Metro switched the drums throughout the track. It was fantastic. Too Many Nights and Walk 'Em Down are also some great bangers. I love Don Toliver's performance on Too Many Nights. I think he's pretty underrated and he's a great vocalist. Coming in at number 9, we have Quadeca, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. Now, it's been crazy to see Quadeca evolve from his Voice Memos project to this one. I really enjoyed Voice Memos at the time. That was kind of like the music I was into, and as I've grown with my music taste, I feel like Quadeca has also, because he put out a fantastic album. I love the production on this album and I thought it had an interesting concept. I still don't fully understand it. It's pretty confusing, but it was cool to see. The artwork for the album was cool, the merch was cool, and the visuals were fantastic. Honestly, these were some of the best music videos I've seen all year long. I really like the aesthetic he went for with this. And the music itself, like I said, has great production. The only thing I think I could critique is the mixing on some songs. However, I know all the mixing on this album was intentional, so I can't really knock it. Personally, that's gonna knock down some replay value for me. But all in all, I thought this was a fantastic album. Here's my top 3 songs. I thought all these were great. I know it's a little basic to have the 2 singles on there, but honestly those grew on me so heavy from when I first heard them. The way that they're structured, the way that they build up, they're all great. And then on Fractions of Infinity, to hear the Sunday Service Choir was so beautiful. I loved it. So yeah, great album. Coming in at number 8, we have Steve Lacy, Gemini Writes. So I think this album was heavily overshadowed by Bad Habit, and don't get me wrong, that's a great song and a fantastic single and it did a lot for him, but this whole album I think was really cohesive. It was basically the soundtrack to my summer. His production and singing throughout the album was great. There were a few slower songs that I don't find myself playing as much just because I'm not really a slow song kind of guy, but in general I think this was a great album. Here are my top 3 favorite songs. Honestly, I probably would have also had Bad Habit in my top 3, but because of how overplayed it is, I left it out and I put some of my other favorites on here. I know Static is super popular too, but it's such a beautiful song. I can't not put it on this list. Coming in at number 7, we have Kenny Mason, Ruffs. Now, I think Kenny Mason is one of the most underrated rappers when it comes to technical rapping ability, just in general rapping, his singing, his cadences, his flows, everything he does so well. He's also super unique. I see a lot of people make comparisons with Jid, for example, because he works a lot with Jid. I see them make comparisons with tons of other rappers, but when you really go through his whole catalog, he fuses so many different genres together, and I've never seen anyone do it like he does. And on Ruffs in particular, he didn't do anything as unique as he had before, but I don't think Kenny intended for this album to be a conceptual album. I think he was just having fun with it, and that really came across in the music. Like I said, his cadences are so fantastic. The way he can yell and sing and switch his pitch, and just he does so many different voices and vocal inflections that I really can't see anyone compare to him. But yeah, this was a fantastic album. Here's my top 3. I've yet to hear a song this year that goes harder than Nosedive, and honestly it was hard to pick a top 3 because there were so many great songs on this project. Coming in at number 6, we have Tom the Mailman with Sunset Visionary Volume 2. Now, this project was a fantastic album. It was more of a pop alt rock type of album, and it was really cool to hear. If you're not familiar with Tom the Mailman, he's a little bit smaller compared to some of the other artists on this list, but he makes really great pop slash alt rock type of music. That's how I just describe it, just with a couple terms. But when I tell you this album didn't have a bad song on it, I mean it. His voice is so good. The instrumentals were all great. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this album except for the fact that it was a great and very well-rounded album. Here's my top 3 favorite songs. These songs are honestly some of the best songs I've heard all year. Brown Eyes and Backwoods is a fantastic song that I kept playing on repeat all year long. Very beautiful song. I recommend checking it out. Coming in at number 5, we have Denzel Curry with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. Now, I might have a little bias here because Denzel is one of my favorite artists. I even made a whole documentary about him. But Melt My Eyes, See Your Future was just a really cool concept album from Denzel. I really liked the artwork, and I really liked just the aesthetic he had with all of his music videos. Also, I really liked the record, if there's no glare on here. Look at that, man. That is so clean. Look at that. It's beautiful. And I also got to see him perform this album live this year, and that made it even better for me. It was really cool to see Denzel explore more of a personal side of his life, and I really liked a lot of the production on this album. Here's my top 3 favorite songs on the album, and I do want to say Melt Session 1 is super underrated. I think it has some of Denzel Curry's best rapping ever, and yeah, it's just a great song, so check it out. At number 4, we have Brakence with Hypochondriac. Honestly, it just came out, or I might have it a little bit higher. I haven't sat with it long enough, but I'm recording this on the 20th, and it came out I think on the 2nd maybe, and I've pressed shuffle on the album 200 times. It's such a great album. It has so much replay value. I tried to make some predictions about it earlier this year because I'm a big fan of Brakence, and I got pretty much everything wrong. Some of the guesses I made about how the production would sound were accurate, but the production on this album was so good. Also, of course, the vocals were good. All the inflections and the cadences sounded so great. I also loved how there were so many transitions from track to track. It all sounded kind of like one big song. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this album other than praise it, so here are my top 3 favorite songs. The melody on Teeth is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. I'd love to hear more of that from Brakence. And the somberness on Introvert is so beautiful. And then Intellectual Greed, you know, just another banger from Brakence. I actually ruled out putting any of the singles in my top 3 because it's just so hard to like pick a top 3 songs on this album because it is that good. Make sure to check it out if you've not heard it already. Coming in at number 3, we have William Crooks with Running As Fast As I Can. Now, this album you guys probably aren't familiar with because William Crooks is the smallest artist on this list. However, this is one of the best albums I've heard this year. So I'm going to redo a bit of how I talked about this album because I don't think I gave it justice. But when I first listened to the album, the first 3 tracks instantly hooked me. I got a taste of so many different subgenres of rap. The production throughout this entire album is so different and versatile, but it's all really good. For example, Drive It Like You Stole It has like 3 beat switches and all of them are super good. Still Life has a phenomenal beat switch, and the instrumental on that song is beautiful, especially the guitar instrumental in the middle. Mambo 500 is just hard. The clipping throughout the album is very tasteful, and then the instrumental and the vocals are just so interesting. I haven't really ever heard a song like that before, and I thought it was super entertaining. If you guys want to hear a weird song, definitely check that one out. I genuinely do think the production on this album is ahead of its time. I also want to say that Willie has some of the best flows, and I think he's very underrated for his technical rapping abilities. Like, he flows so effortlessly over every single beat, and it's really impressive. And the way that he mixes his vocals throughout the album is also very interesting. It's versatile. It's never the same. He always changes it up, different pitches. He also just does different cadences. It's all so entertaining, and I absolutely love it. And for all those reasons and plenty more, I thought this was one of the best albums of the year. Here's my top 3 favorite songs. I highly recommend you guys check these out, and let's get to the next album. Coming in at number 2, we have Gene Dawson with Chaos Now. Now, I've been a big fan of Gene Dawson for quite some time. I think he's a fantastic artist, and this album lived up to all of the hype. This album had so many different sounds on it, and like the title implies, it was fairly chaotic. Screwface, for example, was one of the most chaotic songs on the album, where the instrumental was changing constantly and the energy of the song was changing constantly. He was yelling, he was singing. With that being said, I think this is one of the coolest albums when it comes to all the instrumentals. Gene has phenomenal vocals as usual, and he's just so creative. You rarely will find an artist that is this creative and artistic with their music, and I think Gene executes it so well. Also, like a few other artists on this list, he had really great visuals. I love how his music videos are produced. They're so fantastic. The feature he got from Earl Sweatshirt was very surprising. We got Earl singing on this album, but it was good. It was actually super good. He had a feature from Isaiah Rashad, which just fits so well. The way he fits these rappers into his like alt rock, indie, whatever type songs is just so weird. Like, you don't expect it. You'll hear the instrumental and you'll be like, how is this guy gonna fit on here? But it fits so well every single time. Kind of like he did with A$AP Rocky on Triple Double a couple years ago. So yeah, this was a great album. Here's my top 3 favorite songs. Make sure to check these out, and let's get into the honorable mentions. So these are the albums that didn't quite stick with me, although I thought they were good. 2000 by Joey Badass, again, was a pretty solid album. It was a great listen through. There were a few singles off there I really liked, but in general, the entire album, again, did not stick with me. And this one's going to be controversial, but Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar, this wasn't really for me. and that's okay because it's my opinion. I think it was Sean C. I was listening to, and he described this album as more poetic, but it's not super musical. At least I think that's how he described it, and that's how I describe it too, because it was really cool to listen to the first time, the first time through. I love hearing what Kendrick has to say. I think he's a very thought-provoking artist, but the music aspect just wasn't really there for me on a lot of these songs. So yeah, it's just something I don't really find myself going back to a lot, and obviously that has a big role when it comes to me, at least listening to music. If I can't go back to the album at all or a lot, probably not going to make the list. But with that being said, I did think it was a pretty cool album. I liked how introspective he was, and it was a great listen through, and I would probably listen through it again in the future, although it's not something I'm going to return to a lot. Also, I want to throw Siddhi by icytwat in here. This was like such a fantastic album. It was really fire. He makes most of his beats, I think all of them, I don't know. Great producer. Also, his EPs Trunk Music and City World, those were both great as well. And finally, for my last honorable mention, we have Ghetto Gods by earthgang. I love earthgang, and I think I liked Mirrorland a little bit more in some of their previous albums. This album was solid for sure, and there's a few tracks I really liked, but for some reason I just felt like it was kind of lacking. And coming in at number 1 for the best album of the year, we have Jid with The Forever Story. This is a great album. I really enjoyed this album, and I think in terms of the most well-rounded album of the year, it was this one. There's not a single bad song on this album. There's songs for every single occasion on this album. You got hard songs, you got sad songs, you got chill songs, you got storytelling songs, you got really great rap songs on this album. And he also sprinkled some Kenny Mason throughout the album, which, as you guys know, as I just said, Kenny Mason's one of my favorite rappers, so that was really cool to see. I think all the features perform very well. earthgang, like I just said, I'm a big fan of, and seeing them on this album on Can't Punk Me was great. It's a super underrated song. It's almost in my top 3 favorite songs, but there's so many good ones on this album I had to leave it out, but I'm shouting it out now. But yeah, this album, man, it's so well rounded. It has so many great stories. Jid's talking about things that are timeless. This is a timeless album, and I think it's gonna go down as a classic. Here's my top 3 favorite songs. The Forever Story, beautiful album. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite albums are in the comments below. Also, I made a playlist with my top 30 songs of the year, so I took all my top 3s and put them into a playlist, so make sure to check that out too if you wanted to get a quick listen and an idea of all of these albums. No more videos like this on this channel. Go check out the other channel. I'll be posting more opinionated stuff on there, just more chill stuff. I'll be using my regular voice instead of my YouTube voice, so check it out. Other than that, this has been Manny Balls. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.